when you're in pain, soothing as a springtime rain, to have a friend right in your corner, your heart will feel a little warmer. Tender loving care, tender loving care, each warm and friendly touch lets someone know you care so much. Tender loving care, tender loving care.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Greenbrier Almond, and thank you for joining us on our program, Tender Loving Care. Each week on Channel 3, I've been happy over the past 30-some years to be talking about this issue of where Christianity and medicine come together, where caring and concern and healing come together. And certainly, one of the things that have happened in West Virginia over the past 43 years has been the revolution of our understanding about post-traumatic stress disorder as defined by Buffalo Creek in West Virginia, down in Logan County, the 17-mile-long river, 43 years ago, February the 26th, that ruptured. And millions of gallons of this black sludge came down through the valley, wiping out 6 towns, hundreds of people dying, hundreds surviving, of course, and being forever changed. And we didn't know what to call it back then, but it has become known as post-traumatic stress disorder. It was recognized from 1972 to 1980 as it was studied, and people began to see lives were changed for the worse by stress. We finally figured out what it was. In 1980, it was defined, and now it could be diagnosed and has its own language, as we have language for pneumonia or heart failure or diabetes or all the other diseases that we have. Year 2000, there was actually a Nobel Prize in medicine for PTSD as to what happens inside the brain, the gland called the amygdala that's enlarged, and the hormones that are made there, and the permanent change of the brain structure itself, the amino acid sequences of protein in the nervous system that were changed because of severe stress, so that the memories are indelible and things happen to people's lives as they try to live, not getting themselves into that much danger ever again, whether it's war, whether it's rape, whether it's flood, whether it's fire, an accident, whatever the trauma is that they've undergone. And so I want to talk about that. I thought it was important this time of year, since we are just coming through that season when we remember the Buffalo Creek disaster. And I thought I would begin maybe today to share something that the governor wrote. It's always important to quote Governor Tomblin, who is from Logan County and would probably know more about the details of Buffalo Creek than I'll ever know, and start with his own comments, and then share a little bit about what we know about. I spent most of my career helping veterans from the veteran model, and translate that to civilian traumas, and just share about that today. Governor Tomblin says, "Time heals all wounds," someone once said. "Most wounds, perhaps," he says, "but there are tragedies so grave that the scars survive, and even the passage of decades. These are events so sorrowful that no matter how many years pass since the unfolding, each new anniversary brings the same sad, vivid memories as all the new ones before." And he goes on to say, February the 26th is one of those days, the Buffalo Creek disaster day, the deadliest day in our state's history. Certainly we can remember that. And the tragedy whose sting is as fresh as the day it happened. I know that those who survived it and the succeeding generations of survivors never mark this date without a commemoration that it deserves. He goes on to describe what he was doing. And we often do this when there's a trauma. We begin by saying, what were you doing on 9/11? when our nation was attacked, and 3,000 people died. The World Trade Centers collapsed. The Pentagon was attacked. Perhaps the White House was a target, or the Capitol itself. But there was another crash of a plane brought down by the heroic effort of the passengers as it crashed in Pennsylvania on its way back to Washington. But what were you doing on a day like that? What were you doing on Pearl Harbor Day, if you're an older person? December the 7th, a day that would live in infamy in the early 40s. What were you doing? And you can name other things. And we also, of course, commemorate good things. We remember the day we graduated from high school, the day we got married, the day we got our first car, things like that too. Our memories are that way. We have indelible memories, both good and bad, but focus on the disasters, and we all remember certain days like this. And he goes on and he describes this 132 million gallon flood coming down through that valley, 800 homes destroyed, 900 others severely damaged. So many things happened that day. What a tragedy for the beautiful hills of West Virginia. And I appreciate the governor's remarks, and he's a good leader for us. And hats off to Governor Tomblin, not only from being from Logan County and perhaps overcoming things like that, but also how he's led us as a governor now. And I think we're even better for divided government, but that's another subject for another time. Well, how do we characterize post-traumatic stress disorder? How do we think about this? Well, I have a military checklist here. It's not perfect, and that we're in the 5th version of the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the way we define diseases. The International Code of Diseases are going to come out with a 10th edition. There'll be definitions there that are slightly different from the DSM definitions, but we've come a long way in defining what we mean when we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. Some people, of course, even want to change the name. It's like other diseases. It takes on a bad connotation. People don't want to have that disorder. We change names of diseases from time to time. Epilepsy used to be a good name, and then it got out of favor, and then people said seizure disorder, and then they said convulsive disorder, and now we're back to epilepsy, for example. So diseases get named in various ways, but we all understand what we're talking about, and here's some common descriptions that we see a pattern over and over again. First of all, is having repeated disturbing memories, thoughts, or images of a stressful event, and if it's military service, that would be a war event. So we have to have a traumatic memory. That's the defining characteristic. The Nobel Prize in Medicine went to Dr. Eric Kandel, a Harvard graduate, medical school graduate, who was doing research at Columbia University, and he hit upon an idea. It made a lot of sense, and I'm glad he did the research. The brain and the human body has billions of cells, so it's really impossible to study a human. And even if you could study the human, you can't sacrifice the human brain to see what happened after trauma. I mean, that would be, the Nazis did things like this, human experimentation with the Jewish people, and that's a horrible thing. It's a horrible blot in our past, what they did, and we don't do that. We can't do that. But Dr. Kandel said, well, we can sacrifice a sea slug. Sea slug lives at the bottom of the sea, has 33,000 cells, and its whole purpose in life is to be a little scavenger, clean up the bottom of the ocean. And so it moves towards something, and if it's food, it sort of gets it in. If it's a garbage or something that's fallen to the bottom of the sea, it takes it in and it eats it, and then it digests it, and it cleans up the bottom of the sea. If it's not food, it's not interested in that. It pushes it away. If it's a little rock or a stick or something, and it goes over and it finds food. Okay, that's its life, and that's what God ordained it to do. and it does it very well. But what if it approached, a sea slug approached an object that it might think is food, and then it got an electric shock, or it got burned? Then it would have to learn, wouldn't it, not to go there again, not to go touch that again, because as my mother said, and your mother said, don't touch the edge of that stove, it's hot. You'll get burned. And what did I do? What did you do? Well, I put my hand up there and I touched it a little bit and I got burned. But I didn't touch it twice or 3 times. I learned once burned, twice cautious. And we all learn from our own experiences. And the sea slug does too. Well, Dr. Kendall then sacrificed the sea slug after it had learned not to get an electric shock 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times, after it learned not to get burned 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times. Then it sacrificed the nerve cell of the sea slug and saw that the hormone or the amino acid sequence is different. We have building blocks, amino acids, and there's some 24, 26, 27. I mean, there's come out with new ones all the time. But as we understand these building blocks better, but the sequences then are put together in a certain way and create a pattern we call a protein. And so anyway, once something traumatic has happened, that sequence is changed. The nervous system changes it, so it will learn not to get hurt again. So what happens with traumatic memory? That memory, the governor's mentioned that we all will remember on the anniversary date what happened at Buffalo Creek, and I'm bringing it up on a TV program, remembering 43 years later, and I was in medical school when it happened. So Governor Tomlin's right. We all are going to remember those things on an anniversary date, and some of them have changed us if we personally involved in that. So that's the first definition. And then we have repeated disturbing dreams of stressful events. So something happens, and then the dreaming is a sorting out of what's happened to us in our life. Freud called it a day residue, and so there's something that's distressing that happened, and now we dream about it. We try to think about it. I've been praying for people who have been ill. I have some of my friends who are undergoing cancer therapy and on respirators and have had horrible diseases. And I start to think about that in the daytime, and then what do I dream about? I dream about illness and sickness, and there's distortions to my dreams. Maybe it's not the person that I'm praying for that is in my dream. Maybe it's a family member now, or maybe it's me that has the disease. So you can see, but you get a pattern of disturbing dreams, and that becomes part of the syndrome. They're suddenly acting or feeling as if the stressful event were happening all over again. There's what a soldier will call a trigger. I mean, we know what a trigger is, don't we? If you're a hunter, you know what a trigger is. And you see the deer and you pull the trigger and you hope that you kill your 8 antlered deer, 8-point deer, or you want to get, you pull the trigger. And so anyway, there are triggers though to memory. And so there are certain things that will trigger people. I've heard this from recent combat veterans, the combination of diesel fuel and maybe jet fuel and certain things like this will be a smell that will be a trigger to them of their memory about what happened in Iraq or Afghanistan. Certainly the Vietnam veteran will tell me that certain helicopter sounds will be a trigger to think back about what happened in Vietnam. And so it is. There are triggers for every part of our memory. Most triggers, by the way, the most common trigger is a smell. I mean, take it away from war and things like this, but if a loved one passes away, dear Abby or your pastor or your mother or your grandmother will say, save one article of clothing, clean out the closet, give everything else away, life goes on, but save an article of clothing. And then you can smell that person, that your loved one, and it will comfort you. We have my daughter is a great mother, and she has 2 little girls, and she already knows this. She went away for the very first time this February her husband, and they need to start doing this sometime. And this was we said we'll stay. But anyway, she said I'm going to have a pillow, my pillow, from my bed, and you bring it into the bedroom at night and let the little girls have that pillow close to them. They'll have my scent, and they'll be comforted by that. And she was right. She was right. The odor is the most common way that we remember things. Flowers. And the scent of a flower will remind us of all sorts of joyous things, dates with corsages and things like that. And so it is. Perfumes are valuable because of the memories that they have for us. The fourth thing is that you may have a physical reaction, heart pounding, sweating, a gut reaction. All sorts of physical reactions happen when you start to relive something or re-experience something or remember something, and it's like all over again. And I have, having studied for a long time, 12 years of public school, 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 3 years of residency, see on and on and on, I can have some test anxiety when there's a test, because I've been through so many tests. And I may get a pounding heart or sweating if I'm about to take a test. I have to take some deep breaths, slow down, take it easy, get ready, and go. But that's a natural response. Sometimes we have to not think or talk about a stressful experience, and we have to respect people. I have many soldiers, for example, they come back from combat. They don't want to describe that. It's too horrible to describe. Someone who has been abused as a child, they don't bring it up. Sometimes a woman will bring it up sometimes 30 years later. In my experience, even though in West Virginia some 25% of youth have been abused. This is a statistic that we hear, we've taught in our textbooks, in our medical school lectures. But I can't find 25% of the kids in a grade school in Upshur County that are abused. It's all hidden. But years later, maybe those memories are talked about, and they come out. We try not to think about those things. There are certain activities that we would avoid if that are related to the trauma. Over and over again, I hear this about Walmart. Walmart's a good thing. Number one employer in West Virginia, very busy. And I go in with some excitement. It's a nice store, but there are soldiers who would come back from combat who will not want to go into a Walmart store because it looks too chaotic to them. It looks like the same setup where there would be a bomb, a person wearing a bomb, a suicide bomber, and they would blow themselves up in a public square, and it's a horrible scene, I'm sure. And so to them, that is a soldier coming back, a Walmart looks like that to them. So that's another part of a symptom of PTSD. Some people have a hard time remembering parts of their stressful events, and that's a protection of the brain. If a person is blocking something out, we need to let them keep that blocked out because it could be too horrible to remember. I had the pleasure of interviewing a man who'd won the Congressional Medal of Honor, a very, very high honor for any citizen and a soldier, and he did not actually remember what it is that he received the award for. He was found the next day in Vietnam with 127 dead around him, enemy dead, and he's the only one alive, and it's obvious that he killed them all. But he does not remember it, and I don't blame him for not remembering it. And it's not required as a doctor to make the diagnosis that he have to recall every detail, because some things are too painful to remember, and we have to respect that. It might actually, a person start to remember things like that. They could have a complete breakdown, as the saying is, become psychotic and not recover. It's just too horrible to remember. Some people lose interest in things that they used to enjoy. That's a big one, isn't it, in West Virginia? over and over again, I have classmates, friends, they say, what did you do what do we remember doing when we were kids that we really enjoyed? We've been hunting and fishing. And yet there are some people that come back from combat, they don't hunt anymore because they don't want to kill anything. They don't want to kill a deer or a squirrel or anything because they killed too many things in war, too many people in war. And so they've given up some things that they used to like to do. And that's part of this syndrome. Feeling distant from people. Again, who do you trust in this world? And once burned, twice cautious can come out in relationships too, can it? Some people have been married and had broken relationships. Sometimes they've trusted people and the people betrayed that trust and so forth. Well, what do people do? They back up. They stay distant, and it can be cold. And this can happen through combat trauma too. Various things happen in combat, and feel as if the future will be cut short. Who knows how much future we have anyway? Already in our class, which I've indicated to you that is an example, Buckhannon Upshur class of '66, 50 years out next year. And so we're going to celebrate. Those who have survived are going to celebrate. But all too many of our classmates have died already. We don't know how many days we have. We don't know how many years we have. I think it's an interesting indication of a health of our community. If you go to the newspaper week in and week out and look at the obituaries, as I tend to do, and find that there are many 90-year-olds who are dying or 88-year-olds who are dying and so forth. There are people who have lived to be a ripe old age and they die of a natural cause in their sleep, in their own bed. I think that's a good thing about our community, that we have people so many people that live that long. West Virginia is the oldest state in the Union per capita. There are states like Florida that have more old people than West Virginia have, but they also have more young people than we have. So it's a big state, and we're a small state. But we have a very old population, and that's an interesting fact. And it's a good place to grow old. It's a safe place. But for some people, they feel like their life is going to be shortened. They might be 30 years old. They say, I'm not going to get old. Already so many things have happened to me. And having trouble falling or staying asleep. I often ask children if I'm giving a talk in a school setting about stress. It's a common request to come in and talk about healthy things and healthy living and exercise and family relations and how to stay healthy, preventive measures. But anyway, I'll ask people, well, what about our drives? What's the number one drive? And people sometimes think, oh, breathing. Yeah, we have to breathe, which is true. At least every 5 minutes we breathe. If we don't think about it, automatically we breathe 12 times a minute, maybe 20 times a minute if we're a child. So breathing is right up there. But what is the second most important thing to live, if we want to live? It's to sleep, actually. You can't go more than 9 days without sleep. You can go 14 days or so without water. You can go 40 days, 50, 60 days without food. Think about it. But the things that keep us alive, the second most physiological drive that we have to do is sleep. But many people who had stress, severe stress, cannot sleep. And no wonder their life is shortened. No wonder their life is miserable. And so one of the things we do therapeutically is help them adjust and learn how to sleep, or help them to sleep better. And then another thing a syndrome we often see is anger, irritability. There are a lot of people angry in our culture. We seem to have policemen who are violent toward people there to protect the citizens. Almost see that every day. We have people who are doing violent things to each other all the time. It's hard to listen to the news sometimes, how angry we are. But also, people who have been in combat or had overwhelming stresses in their life can be very irritable and very angry people. And that's part of the syndrome. Being super alert or watchful. Naturally, again, once burned, twice cautious. We're watching to be sure that we're not getting into a situation that has been dangerous for us in the past. I've been in some near fatal events as far as life goes in the woods during hunting season, and so I don't want to go into the woods on the first day of hunting season. I would be too watchful, too alert. It would not be a pleasurable experience to me to do that. And each of us have our own stress points like that, where we're watchful about things. And of course, feel easily jumpy if we're startled. This is a horrible thing. Bullying is always horrible, but I've had patients tell me over and over again that because they startle easily, their nervous system is geared to jump if there's something unexpected, a sound, or something that would startle them, unexpected, that they hate it. But there will be people at work who will make a loud noise behind their back just to see them startle. It's a bully tactic. It's a horrible thing to do. But that to startle easily makes the checklist of things that we're curious about when we think about our soldiers who have come back from combat, or anyone else who has PTSD. In the closing minutes here, I want to just talk about demographics, and because you may not know someone with PTSD, you may not know someone who's been in combat, you may not actually have a family member or someone this impacts directly. But let me share with you just about, we have said this many times as a state, that we have more soldiers who fight in wars per capita, again, as a small state, than any other state. And that's true. We have some 1,200 soldiers who live in Upshur County, for example. And we have, according to this statistic I have today, we have some 128 who then would have children. And so they're impacted. They're military children. You may not know a military child. You may not know a child whose dad has been killed in combat or is a disabled American veteran. But there are 128 of them right here in Upshur County. And I think that's since I've been on the school board, I've become aware of that. If something happens to a child's disruptive in class, one of my first thoughts is where's their father or mother? Did they go over and fight in one of the recent wars? And if that's the case, then I want to give them special attention. We'll have to make sure they're safe and people around them are safe, but let's find out if there's a why behind what has happened to them. And around us, other counties around us have similar numbers. 65 children in Lewis County have parents who have served in the military. Harrison County, just up the road, 367. It's a larger county. So more children, in that case, have parents who served in combat. Barber County, 44, a smaller county than us. But you can see the pattern. Webster, down the road, 17. It's a very small county by population. But I want to point that out because in understanding about PTSD as I have, so I was in medical school when this began in Buffalo Creek, 1972. And here I am finishing my career, but very much interested in PTSD. So my whole career has been involved in this. Anyway, I want to think about it in terms of how can we be caring, total life or tender loving care. How can we show tender loving care one to another for people who have been stressed out? And one of the ways to do that is to be aware that it's all around us and we can do something about it, especially on an anniversary date. Well, until the next time, there's a lot more to talk about, but until the next time, this is Dr. Greenbrier Ahlmann thanking you for joining us on our program, Tender Loving Care. Special thanks to Channel 3 for this opportunity to come your way each week, and we look forward to more dialogue about tender loving care within our community.
Stories of a West Virginia Doctor, written by Dr. Harold D. Allman. A collection of 55 short stories about his experience as a small-town doctor in central West Virginia. And Tender Loving Care. Stories from a West Virginia Doctor, Volume 2, written by Dr. Greenbrier Allman, using videotapes to write 70 additional stories of his father's very colorful life as a small-town doctor. They can be found for purchase at Amazon.com and most local bookstores. Tune into Channel 3 Buckhannon for Tender Loving Care with Dr. Greenbrier Allman, where he talks about the connection between Christianity and medicine.